Hello, everybody. I'm Hayim Raclaw, CEO of PsyTech Inc., and I'm joined now by Ronan Levy. He's the co-founder and executive chairman of Field Trip Health Limited. Thank you for joining me, Ronan.
My pleasure.
This fireside chat would have been A, side by side, and B, next to a fire if it wasn't for COVID. So we're conducting this conversation responsibly, but Ronan, with this technology, I feel like I'm 6 feet away from you.
I can feel the warmth sitting right here. It's all good.
I'd like to start this conversation with a discussion around drug development, delivery, and therapy. This psychedelic renaissance that we're in right now is driven in large part by the compelling data that's emanating from accredited universities leveraging the scientific method. So if you're intellectually honest, either as a layman reader of the research, a researcher, or a medical practitioner, it's stigma dissolving. It creates stigma dissolution, and that's accelerating the acceptance in the medical communities. And the objective one of the objectives we all discuss in this community is the mainstream use of psychedelics for mental health, given the incredible capacity for healing that we feel that these molecules and use in combined with good therapy have. We had a conversation previous to this where you were redefining or expanding the definition of drug delivery. Could you repeat that for our listeners now?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right that the incredible academic credentials that are leading the psychedelic renaissance right now are achieving wonderful things. And they're also the impetus that's driving, I think, the investor interest in it as well. We saw Compass Pathways go public a couple weeks ago to great fanfare. Field Trip Health Limited went public on the CSE last week as well. And you're seeing an incredible amount of investor interest, particularly from well-established pharmaceutical biotech investor base, which is fantastic. And I think it's reflective of exactly what you said, that this is being data-driven, it's science-driven, it's not grassroots or political. But what's really unique about the psychedelics sector, and I think what the lens that all investors need to bring to this, that this is not biotech as usual. This is not medicine as usual. With with psychedelics, the delivery of the medicine is as important on an evidentiary basis as the molecule itself. When you look at conventional allopathic medicine, you go to a doctor, the doctor prescribes a medication, the medication does the work. In the context of psychedelic medicine, the medication, the psychedelic molecule, the psilocybin, the MDMA, the LSD, the DMT, the FT104, the molecule we have in development, is a catalyst. It is used to enhance the effects of psychotherapy. It is not the solution in and of itself. And as a result, when you look at the companies that are advancing the work here, if they're not spending a significant, at least almost equal portion of their time advancing the therapies, the set and setting, all the aspects that go around the actual administration of the psychedelic medicine, then they're kind of hopping around on one foot. And that's not to discredit the great work that's being done, but if you don't have direct influence and control over the actual administration of the drug and the therapies that support it and the set and setting in which the patient is experiencing this, then you're leaving a lot of the therapeutic experience to chance, to third parties that you don't have direct influence over. And that's why we've developed our model with Field Trip Health as being one that's integrated, where we're doing the drug development work, and it's incredible work that Nathan, our Chief Science Officer, and his team are doing. But we're also actively investing in developing the infrastructure to deliver this medicine, because it's so important to the actual therapeutic outcomes. And you see that through our Field Trip Health centers that are rolling out across North America. They're starting with the delivery of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, but they really act as a starting point from a strategic perspective, antennas by which we'll be collecting data, right? Understanding what the best delivery protocols are, what the best therapies are, what the best cognitive behavioral therapies are, what the best set and settings are. It's all essential to the therapy, and that's what's making psychedelic medicine so unique in my mind.
It's several great points in there that I want to follow up on. The first is I liked, thank you for redefining drug delivery. Traditionally, when you say that, for traditional pharmaceutical markets, drug delivery is simply the physical means of getting the drug into the body. You're saying that's one component. That's not what drug delivery should be entirely, at least for the drugs that we're talking about here, psychedelics. Absolutely. For the use of mental health, setting, the psychiatry that goes along with it is all part of what drug delivery should mean for us. And
absolutely.
Second thing you mentioned that I'd like to touch in on is that Field Trip is starting with ketamine first, and for understandable reasons. That's the only psychedelic or pseudo psychedelic that is legal for use in clinics currently in the United States. And there's a lot of opinions on the timing of the legal use for therapy. So the mainstreaming of use to help as many people as possible of additional psychedelics. Of course, the breakthrough drug status granted to both MDMA and psilocybin by the US FDA, as well as the market-driven indicators we see by companies like yours going public or attracting a lot of capital for good research and good business models, that all seem to be dependent for their major gains on forthcoming legalization for clinical use. What are your thoughts on the timing around these things?
Yeah, I mean, our thesis from day one when we got into this industry, so Field Trip was born in April of 2019, but we've been actively working on developing the business model since early 2018. And the conclusion we came to very quickly is that you're going to see legal access to psychedelic therapies much sooner than most people would guess. That's always been core to our philosophy and business rationale for how we're executing on our strategy with Field Trip. But you know, it's not all speculative. We see MAPS, which is in a phase 3 trial with MDMA for PTSD. They reported incredible results out of their phase 2 with close to 70% of patients with chronic severe PTSD no longer having PTSD after 2 to 3 MDMA assisted psychotherapy sessions. They've already reported that they are seeing the early stages of statistical significance in their phase 3. They're going to be coming out, I believe, with their initial phase 3 study reports by the end of this month. And their timelines are sometime in 2022, 2023 to have MDMA approved and marketed. Compass Pathways has been pretty open about the fact that they expect their timing to be around 2025, 2026. So these are the timelines that you're going to see FDA or Health Canada approval for these kind of molecules. That being said, in parallel, and I think one of the things that makes it such an interesting market is you see the grassroots movement happening too, which is you could see as soon as a couple weeks from now in the US election, the state of Oregon create a legal market for psilocybin, either the mushrooms or synthetics, which would be up and running by 2022. So you could see legal access, at least on a state level, by 2022 in Oregon. And in Canada, there's also there's an interesting evolution happening with the Minister of Health granting 6 Section 56 exemptions to end-of-life patients to access psilocybin.
Compassionate care use.
Yeah, so there's a number of different pathways that are going to probably all lead to different paths to legalization.
Question on the states. I know we have a lot of American attendees to the PsyTechsummit, members of the PsyTech community. On the state legalizations, which would be in contravention of federal law, much like cannabis, which is why what's happening in psychedelics is so compelling, because you have 2 federal agencies at loggerheads, the FDA and the DEA, and my money's on the FDA in the fullness of time. But when the states go legalize state by state or decriminalize the use of psilocybin, say in Oregon, do you think that'll usher in clinical use in Oregon in advance of the timelines that you cited from MAPS and Compass?
Yeah, so if you look at the structure of the program in Oregon, it does require that it be used in a clinical context, that it be administered by a licensed professional. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a doctor. They are going to qualify people, but it will be a clinical use. It will be therapeutic. But the interesting and exciting aspect of it is that it would be open to anybody over the age of 18 who doesn't have a contraindication. So it's a much broader program. And I know it doesn't fit nicely within the context of conventional pharmaceutical or biotech investing or even allopathic medicine as usual, but one of the most exciting aspects of psychedelics is that they have a lot of pro-social, as opposed to antisocial, pro-social side effects. People who go through psychedelic experiences tend to report greater optimism, greater openness to opposing viewpoints, which certainly in the US and globally is, I think, something in short supply these days, greater connection to the planet, increased creativity, increased empathy, all of these wonderful characteristics that I actually think we can't get enough of in our society are side effects of psychedelic therapies. So they have incredible potencies for healthy normals, as well as those people dealing with severe mental health conditions as well. And that's why programs like what's happening in the state level on Oregon, I think are so important, because they're going to expand reach. They're going to expand access to a much larger audience. And I think the net effect of that impact, especially if done in a thoughtful, regulated way, is going to be profound, seriously profound,
So
even beyond the great clinical data that's out there. Sorry, please continue.
No. Forgive me for interrupting. You're just on a point that's that many of us in the community share, and that is not we're the tip of the spear is dealing with mental pathology, because people in great need, and there is an absolute pandemic when it comes to mental health. That is, the numbers are staggering and heartbreaking. Yep. However, what you say about the need for the pro-social, maybe not side effects, maybe main effects of psychedelics for use in wellness, for quote unquote healthy normals to benefit from these molecules. How do you see that unfolding?
I see it unfolding exactly like it is right now, actually, which is you're going to see those trials around the FDA continuing to move forward successfully, I expect. At the same time, you're going to see these grassroots movements looking to expand. Now, if you talk to certain people who are on the very corporate side of the psychedelic industry, their perspective is they want to see those same pro-social side effects being implemented and accessible. They think the path to that is just focus on an indication that will get approval, and then quickly you'll see off-label use permitting
The pharma
whatever
model.
the pharma model, which is great. I think it's so important, though, that we can't put all of our eggs in one basket. The FDA and the structure that they provide has done wonderful things to create a world in which, we are healthier. We're living longer than ever by and large. Health is improving globally. The structure works, but it is also imperfect, and it does lead to unideal outcomes sometimes. And given the importance of this, like you mentioned this crisis, we live in a world where 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people are going to experience depression at some point in their lives. The pandemic is apparently, the latest study I saw, has increased depression rates in the US by a factor of 3. There are 3 times more people who are depressed in the US over the last 6 to 8 months than existed before, which was already a huge number of people.
Yes.
And the current treatment options just are not really getting the job done. So we have an urgent need. It's incredibly important. The FDA process is a good one, and it's a thoughtful one, and it's a smart one, but it's rigid, it's expensive, and it is imperfect. Every process is imperfect. And that's why I think having multiple paths towards legalization is important. They all have their risks and benefits, but in the end, my view, and I think many of the people in the community and the industry's view, is that the benefits of doing this thoughtfully far outweigh the risks associated with sticking to a single path, which is the FDA path. That's just my personal view, but I think it's so important that it's worth a conversation at the very least.
That's a wonderful comment on which to end this conversation. Multiple paths is exactly what PsyTech is all about. We want to have these conversations with the broadest group of well-intentioned and thoughtful actors in this space. And Field Trip is certainly a leader amongst them. Thank you very much for your time. And
My
we
pleasure.
welcome you back anytime. Thank you, Ronan.
It's been great being here. Thank you for having me.